A routine patrol turned into something no one saw coming. A K-9 suddenly froze outside a locked storage unit, refusing to move. His instincts locked on something hidden inside. When officers forced the door open, what they uncovered left everyone stunned. But what they found next changed everything. The afternoon was ordinary, at least at first glance. A quiet stretch of the city's edge where long rows of steel storage units stood like forgotten guardians of people's hidden lives. Some were filled with old furniture, others with memories boxed away and left untouched for years. The area often carried a silence that felt heavier than the walls themselves. Yet, on this day, that silence broke when a police K-9 suddenly froze, halting mid-step outside one particular unit. The dog, a sharp and loyal German shepherd named Rex, had been assisting officers on a routine patrol through the storage facility. Nothing seemed unusual until they passed that one locked door. Rex's body stiffened, his ears twitched forward, and his paws pressed firmly into the concrete as if something beyond that steel wall demanded his full attention. Officers exchanged puzzled glances. This was not a false alarm. Rex had never acted this way without cause. His breaths grew heavier, his tail rigid, eyes locked on the unit. Something inside triggered his instincts, and those instincts had never once been wrong. The storage unit looked no different from the rest. A rusted steel door, a heavy padlock, and faint numbers scratched into its side. But why this one? What did Rex sense in there? Was it a sound, a smell, or something entirely unseen? As the officers approached, a thin draft escaped from the small gap near the bottom of the door. Rex lowered his nose to the crack and inhaled sharply. Then he let out a short bark, followed by a low growl that sent a ripple of unease through the team. Whatever lay behind that door was not simple clutter. The officers had questions racing in their minds. Who rented this unit? Why had Rex chosen it out of dozens? And most of all, what could possibly be inside that would stir such a reaction from a trained K-9? The lead officer noted the details on the unit and radio dispatch to cross-check its records. Within minutes, a surprising answer came back. The storage lease had been registered under a name that meant little on the surface, yet flagged their system immediately, an alias previously linked to smuggling activity. Still, no one knew what kind of contraband could warrant this level of attention from Rex. The padlock itself looked ordinary, but time-worn scratches near the latch suggested it had been tampered with more than once. Had someone else tried to force it open before? If so, why abandon the effort? The air that seeped from beneath the door carried an almost metallic tang, faint but distinct. Officers leaned closer, puzzled, while Rex's steady growl deepened. It was not fear in his growl, it was warning. The mystery only grew thicker. Dispatch informed the officers that they would need clearance before cutting open the lock. It would take time, but time in moments like this stretched endlessly. To keep the area secure, the officers formed a perimeter around the unit. A small crowd of workers from the facility began to gather at a distance, whispering, their curiosity just as restless as the officers. Rex never shifted his gaze. He remained crouched, muscles tense, a living signal that something inside was not right. The dog had served in countless operations, from narcotics to missing persons. Every handler trusted his nose, his instincts, and now every fiber of his body was pointing at this door. The longer the officers waited, the heavier the questions grew. Was it dangerous? Was someone inside? Could it be a hidden stash of illegal goods or something far worse? At last, authorization arrived. A bolt cutter was fetched, and the padlock snapped with a sharp metallic crack that echoed through the corridor of storage units. For a brief second, silence returned. Then Rex lunged forward, barking with urgency, as if urging them to move faster to uncover the secret sealed away inside. But when the door creaked open just a few inches, the officers froze. The darkness inside was heavy, thick, almost swallowing the beam of the flashlight that tried to pierce through. Dust swirled in the air, carrying with it that same strange metallic scent, stronger now, and mixed with something else, something older, something unsettling. The first flashlight beam landed on what looked like scattered crates. They were stacked unevenly, some marked with faded shipping labels, others sealed with rusted nails. A canvas sheet hung loosely over part of the pile, its edges frayed, as though it had been dragged carelessly. Rex barked again, his nose pushing forward, his eyes fixed beyond the crates. He was not interested in boxes. He was pointing deeper, to something hidden within the shadows, something not yet revealed. The officers hesitated, torn between advancing or securing backup before entering fully. Their instincts whispered caution, yet curiosity pressed them onward. One officer stepped inside, his boots crunching on what sounded like broken glass or scattered tools. His flashlight swept across the walls, revealing faint stains, streaks that looked like rust but felt suspiciously out of place. Rex barked louder, pawing at the ground, eyes blazing at a corner of the unit. The dog was not asking, he was demanding. The beam of the flashlight followed Rex's focus, landing on a large wooden chest tucked deep in the corner, partially hidden beneath a tarp. Its surface was scarred, the lock old and dented. Unlike the crates, this chest carried weight, not just in size but in presence. What could it hold? Why hide it beneath everything else? And why was Rex so intent on it? The officers gathered around, lifting the tarp and clearing the dust. Each second stretched longer, the questions clawing louder at their minds. As one officer prepared to test the chest, a sudden sound echoed faintly from inside, barely audible but enough to freeze every breath in the room. It was not metal, it was not wood, it was something else entirely. Rex lunged, barking with a ferocity that shook the silence to its core. The officers exchanged stunned looks, hearts racing. Something was alive inside. The storage unit had grown unbearably silent, broken only by Rex's heavy breathing and urgent barks. The officers stood frozen, their flashlights locked on the old wooden chest in the corner. The faint sound they had heard, it was no trick of imagination. Something had stirred from inside. Every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary discovery. The chest, scarred and weathered, looked like it had been dragged through years of secrets. The lock, though rusty, was still fastened tightly, and the faint metallic odor in the air only grew sharper with every second. Rex's paws scraped at the floor, his body lowering into a tense stance. His nose pressed forward, tail rigid. He was locked onto that chest with a focus so unbreakable that no one doubted what it meant. Whatever was inside, it mattered. The officers debated quickly, should they open it now or call in backup with specialized equipment. Yet hesitation only made the tension worse. The chest had already revealed its presence with that faint sound. If something or someone was inside, time was not on their side. With steady hands, one officer crouched, bringing the bolt cutter down on the lock. The metal screeched as it snapped apart. The air inside the unit seemed to grow colder, heavier. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then, with a slow creak, the chest lid was lifted. Inside, bundled beneath worn blankets, lay stacks of sealed packages. The flashlight beams reflected off layers of thick plastic wrapping, tightly compressed. The packages carried faint markings, cryptic codes scrawled in ink. To a trained eye, it was instantly clear this was contraband, carefully hidden and preserved. Yet that was not what made Rex bark louder. His nose pressed deeper toward the far side of the chest, pawing at the remaining blankets. When the officers pulled them aside, they froze again. Beneath the packages, concealed almost completely, was a small metal box. Its surface was dented, rusted at the corners, but its weight looked unmistakable, and unlike the packages, this box gave off that faint, unsettling metallic scent that had filled the unit since they opened the door. Rex growled low, his hackles raised. This was what he had sensed. The officers carefully lifted it out, setting it on the concrete floor. The box rattled faintly when shifted, something loose inside, but before anyone could reach for its latch, a noise startled them all. Footsteps. From the shadows outside the storage unit corridor came the distinct echo of hurried steps, then silence. Someone was nearby, watching. The officers spun, scanning the dim pathway between the units, but the source had already slipped away. Had someone been guarding the chest, or worse, had they been waiting for the officers to find it? The discovery had already taken a darker turn. The officers secured the packages, but the metal box remained their focus. The markings on it were unfamiliar, etched deeply into the lid as if carved with purpose. A series of numbers and a strange symbol, something that looked like an emblem, though worn too badly to identify clearly. What did it mean? Why hide it beneath everything else? One officer suggested waiting for specialized units to examine it, but Rex would not stop barking. His insistence was unrelenting, his nose locked on the box. It was as though he knew the answer waited inside, the final link to whatever mystery had drawn them here. The latch was fragile, but rusted shut. With effort, they pried it open. The lid groaned before finally giving way. Inside, nestled in layers of cloth, was a collection of objects. Each one seemed ordinary at first glance, yet carried weight in context. A worn leather notebook, its cover nearly falling apart. A set of photographs yellowed with age, edges curling. And at the bottom, a small bracelet, delicate, rusted, but unmistakably once belonging to a child. The air in the unit grew heavier as realization sank in. This was no ordinary smuggler's chest. These were personal items, belongings tied to someone perhaps long forgotten. Rex lowered his growl, sitting back, his eyes still fixed on the box. His bark had led them to this, but now his silence carried a different meaning. The officers flipped through the photographs under the flashlight beam. They were not random. Each picture showed different places, families, faces. Some were blurry, others clear enough to recognize the sorrow of those captured moments. One photo, however, caught every eye. A young girl, no older than 8, smiling while holding that same bracelet. The bracelet now sat rusted in front of them, its once bright charms dulled by time. Questions surged like wildfire. Who was the girl? Why were her belongings hidden here? And how did it connect to the alias tied to this storage unit? The notebook offered no immediate clarity. Its pages were scribbled with names, dates, and fragmented notes, but no clear story. Yet one name appeared repeatedly, underlined in different places. A name the officers recognized. It matched a missing persons case from years earlier, one that had gone cold after months of searching. Could this chest be the missing link? The officers stepped back, the weight of discovery pressing on them. What began as suspicion of contraband had turned into something far more human, far more haunting. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the rows of steel doors. Rex remained seated, his eyes reflecting the flashlight beams, calm now but still watchful. His job was not done. He had brought them to the door, to the chest, and now to the box. The mystery was no longer just about illegal goods. It was about lives, memories, and perhaps secrets buried too long. As the officers prepared to transport the evidence, one final detail gnawed at their thoughts: the footsteps outside. Whoever had been there knew what the officers had uncovered, and chances were they were not ready to let these secrets come to light. The storage unit was sealed once again, but the mystery had only deepened. Somewhere between the contraband, the photographs, and the bracelet lay the answer. An answer Rex had been determined to find. The question now was, what truth waited when all the dots were finally connected? The chest, the photographs, the bracelet, they had shifted everything. What seemed like another contraband bust had spiraled into something far deeper, far more personal. Yet the officers knew this was only the beginning of the truth. Rex had not simply alerted to smuggled goods. He had led them to a story buried in shadows, waiting to surface. Back at the precinct, the evidence was spread across the table under harsh fluorescent lights. Officers moved carefully, photographing, cataloging, tracing every detail. The contraband packages were sealed for transport, but the real focus lay on the small metal box. The notebook, the bracelet, the photographs, they carried weight heavier than any drugs or illegal shipments. The lead investigator studied the missing persons files. Years ago, a girl had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The case had been marked unsolved, the trail cold. The family had grieved without answers, their lives suspended in uncertainty. Now her name appeared repeatedly in the notebook, tied to dates and coded notes that hinted at movements, places, and hidden transactions. Had this storage unit been part of the chain that silenced her story? And why would her belongings resurface here, alongside smuggled goods? Rex sat quietly in the room, his eyes never leaving the bracelet on the table. For the officers, it was evidence. For him, it was a scent, a memory, a thread he had pulled from the shadows of the locked unit. The notebook was turned over to specialists. Deciphering the scribbled notes was painstaking, but fragments began to reveal connections. The alias that leased the storage unit linked directly to a larger network, an underground operation that trafficked not just contraband, but people. The belongings of the girl had not been forgotten accidentally. They had been kept deliberately, trophies in a chain of crimes. But one entry stood out. A date, only a week earlier, paired with a location just outside the city. Unlike the older entries, this one was fresh, recent, written as if the story had not ended after all. Could it mean what the officers dared not say aloud? The next morning, they followed the lead. Rex was at the front, his leash held firm, but his determination pulling him onward. The location was remote, hidden in the outskirts where abandoned cabins sat among the trees. The officers moved quietly, flashlights sweeping through the morning mist. Rex froze suddenly, ears sharp, nose pressing into the wind. He pulled toward one particular cabin, its windows boarded, its door chained. His barks rang out across the silence, echoing the same urgency he had shown at the storage unit. The chain on the door was cut. The officers entered cautiously, weapons drawn, flashlights piercing the gloom. The air was thick, stale, carrying the same faint metallic tang that had clung to the storage unit. Inside, scattered crates lined the walls, but Rex ignored them. He pushed deeper, barking furiously at a closed interior door. The officers broke it open. What they found inside left every breath suspended in shock. In the dim room, huddled in the corner, was a girl. Her eyes squinted against the sudden light, her face pale but alive. The bracelet that once gleamed in the old photograph now sat rusted in evidence, but around her wrist was its missing twin, faded but unmistakable. She was not the same girl from the photos, too much time had passed, but she was connected. The missing girl's younger sister, long thought lost as well. She had been hidden, kept away, her existence erased from public record. Tears filled the eyes of officers as the reality set in. Rex had not just uncovered contraband or old memories, he had found the living link to a family's unanswered prayers. The girl was carried out gently, wrapped in blankets, her trembling hands clutching the officers with fragile trust. She had survived years of silence, and now, through a trail of evidence buried in a locked unit, she was finally free. Back at the precinct, the reunion was nothing short of extraordinary. The girl's parents, aged by years of grief, walked in trembling, unable to believe what they were about to see. When their daughter stepped forward, alive, the cries that filled the room carried both sorrow and joy. The missing girl's case had scarred them deeply, but now, through Rex's unrelenting determination, they had a second chance. Rex was there too, sitting calmly at the side, his eyes soft yet alert. When the girl knelt to touch him, he leaned forward gently, resting his head against her hand as though he had carried her weight all along. The notebook was now more than scribbles. It was evidence that cracked open a network, leading to multiple arrests in the days that followed. The contraband was seized, the aliases traced, the perpetrators caught one by one. What began at a locked storage unit ended with justice reaching further than anyone had expected. But beyond the arrests, beyond the seized goods and broken chains, there was the family, restored in the most unexpected way. For the town, the story spread quickly. A locked storage unit had become the doorway to uncovering secrets long buried, to saving a life that had nearly been forgotten. And at the center of it all was Rex, the K9 who refused to pass by in silence. In the end, the mystery that once filled the air with unease had unraveled into a resolution that carried warmth, hope, and healing. The chest, the bracelet, the photographs, all pieces of a puzzle that led not to despair, but to a new beginning. And as Rex was honored days later at a small ceremony, the applause that filled the hall was not just for a dog's instincts. It was for the bond between human and canine, for the unspoken trust that had led officers through locked doors and hidden shadows, straight into the light of truth. The storage unit no longer stood as a silent wall of secrets. It stood as a reminder that even in the darkest corners, the truth waits, and sometimes it takes a dog's determination to lead the way. If you thought this mystery kept you hooked till the very end, just wait till you see the next one. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you're here the moment it drops. And if Rex's story gave you chills, give this video a like. It tells me you're ready for the next big reveal.